Erica, I am so glad to have you on the Rising Beyond podcast. Welcome.
Well, so good to see you. I actually, I meant to say this to you earlier when we were just chatting. I really appreciate the work that you do in the world. You do such beautiful, empowering, amazing work. So I'm really honored to be here.
I appreciate that. And we are collaborating because we have similar values. We want to see our, people in our world survive, first of all, but moving past that survival place and feeling really capable and have agency and autonomy in their world. So I think that we are a good partnership.
Yeah, I love it.
So I asked my audience, what did they want to know more about? What would be the most helpful for them in the next 3 months? So if you're listening to this, it's at the beginning of 2025, and it was a resounding, they would like to know more about how to fully heal from coercive control, domestic violence, narcissistic abuse. And Erica is the perfect person to get us started. So we are going to talk about kind of science-backed nervous system approaches to start our healing process. Why is that so important to start there?
Yeah. So, I think we know now more about the brain and the nervous system than we ever have in human history. And it's still a frontier. We still don't know so much, but we know a lot more than we used to. And if we don't bring in the body, if we don't start incorporating the nervous system, what's going to happen is we're going to continue to recapitulate trauma. We're going to continue to recapitulate those same patterns, even though we know about them, even though we might even know what the root is, or we have enough psychoanalyzing of ourselves, right? We have enough pop culture or family of origin understanding or whatever, even though we know consciously about these things. If we don't do what we know works, we're going to still recapitulate those patterns, right? And then we're going to get stuck even more in that shaming and blaming cycle. It's like, I know better. I know this. Why can't I break these patterns?
Yeah.
And so that's such a trap. And am I allowed to cuss on your podcast?
Yes. Folks here know that I cuss like a sailor. I do tone it down a little bit when I'm here.
Me too. But one of my little catchphrases or whatever is like, trauma doesn't give a shit what you know. And we can know all kinds of things. We can know that it's not our fault. We can know that this might stem from family of origin shit. We can know generational trauma even, right? We can have this understanding of that in our conscious mind. But our vagus nerve, which is the nerve that runs from your brainstem to your gut, doesn't connect to your frontal lobes. So 75% of what is happening in your nervous system, whether that's digestion stuff, flight or fight response, fawning response, heart rate, all of this stuff, 75% is happening or is involved in the vagus nerve. And so it doesn't matter in some ways what we consciously know. Knowledge is important, but the body and the vagus nerve it's going to be ineffective if all we're doing is just knowing. If all we're doing is reading about this stuff, or if all we're doing is psychoanalyzing ourselves, that is going to be insufficient. Or if all we're doing is trying to really positive affirmation our way through our lives, right? Like, we shouldn't throw a positive affirmation practice out, but it's going to be insufficient in addressing the roots of the problem. So I think bringing in the body, bringing in the nervous system, and doing this preventatively, not just curatively, is going to allow people to, you can think of the vagus nerve almost like a muscle, right? You're not going to build muscle if you're just doing one set of arm curls. You've got to tone the vagus nerve consistently over time. And that's going to allow your nervous system to grow in its capacity. And you're actually going to have a fighting chance at doing something different, right? A lot of people know we should set boundaries, right? Or we should quote unquote, we want to start saying no to things or stop people pleasing so much. But sometimes those patterns are stored in the survival part of the brain. Like it feels like if we stop people pleasing or if we say no to the bake sale, we're going to die.
Yes.
Even though we
Yeah.
know different, in our nervous system, it feels like setting boundaries or whatever feels like we're going to frickin' die because it is
Yeah.
the thing that we did to survive. And so it is
Yes.
stored in the nervous system as such.
Yeah. And so if you're thinking, like, I'm not totally sure what this nervous system thing is, I'm not sure all of these things, but you think about when you were in your relationship with your ex-partner, all of those things that now you are probably shaming yourself for doing
Yes,
that
exactly.
kept you alive to where you can listen to my podcast. You are safer now. I can't always say safe, but you hopefully have left your abuser. If not, that you are finding ways to stay safe within that. But those things that you did when your partner, he came in, he threw mail on the table, and your nervous system, what we're talking about is that survival kind of lizard part of your brain, this like early part of your brain computed really quickly. You need to do these things to stay safe tonight.
Mhm.
And so if you are in a situation where you aren't allowing yourself, you're telling yourself to not do those three things that kept you safer, your brain is going to be like, danger, 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 fight, flight, freeze.
Totally. Fun.
Fun. Yes.
And some of that is happening in a conscious choosing, but a lot of that is happening in an automatic, primal, animal type of way.
Mm-hmm.
And so even if you know better, it's not going to feel like an option to your nervous system unless we're slowly stretching, what we in the biz maybe call the window of tolerance, right?
Yes.
The ability to handle and tolerate adversity and really step into a place of power and choosing from a place of wisdom, from a place of finding the corners of power that you do have and choosing that. That's going to feel like an option if your window of tolerance is just a little bit more expanded.
Yeah.
Right. And in those moments, again, if you think about trauma and a nervous system organized around trauma, that nervous system is going to be very myopic in the way that it views the world, in the ways that it views ourselves, in the ways that it views the situation. And so oftentimes we will get stuck in the tunnel vision. And if you think about being jackknifed on a highway, right? You want tunnel vision online. You want good, bad, safe, not safe, go, right?
Yep.
You don't want to be like, I wonder if the truck driver's having a bad day, right? That would get you killed. But in a lot of situations, that myopic thinking that is actually perpetuating the pattern and that it's perpetuating the reactivity of either fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And we can't see the bigger picture. We can't think creatively. We can't think outside of the binary. That's another thing. It's myopic and binary. It's tunnel vision and it's either or, good,
Safe.
bad, safe, not safe. And you're not defective. Your nervous system is doing exactly what it is meant to do. And we might do well to, at times, when we can, when we're not actually in immediate life or death danger, it might be good to practice expanding your vision and getting creative thinking back online so that you can actually respond with wisdom rather than the automatic procedural patterns that your body's used to doing.
Yeah. And that wisdom is not just brain thoughts, right? But there is this piece of it that when you are in that fight, flight, freeze, fawn, most of the time your frontal lobe, that's your thinking part of your brain, goes offline. It's just gone. And so we can't make the same sort of responses.
Exactly. And again, your nervous system is doing exactly what it's meant to do, right? If you think about how human brains evolved, right, it did us well survival wise to pay attention to the rustling in the bushes, not how pretty the sky was, And so our brains are naturally sticky when it comes to dangerous or negative experiences. And that's meant to keep you alive. And so all the things that come with that, people pleasing, fawning, over responsibility, shame-based identity. A shame-based identity, there's often a pretty big Venn diagram for survivors of trauma, survivors of domestic violence or narcissistic abuse, and a shame-bound identity. And so that is really important to just be aware of and to know that even that actually has its adaptive qualities. Because if you believe that it's about you, especially as a kid, some of these patterns started as a young kiddo. You believing that it was you believing that you were the problem gave you a little bit of power. Because if it was about you, I can track you really well, caregiver. I can track what you want and I can give it to you. Or I can become a therapist, or I can, if it's about me, then I can do something to change it. And if it's about me, then I can maintain the fantasy that you love me and that you're safe and predictable. So even that shame-bound identity has an adaptive quality to it. So a lot of times we're like, I have shame and then I have shame about the shame.
Yes.
And so, even if you can't greet yourself with compassion, of course we want to point our feet in the direction of that, but I would maybe go for neutrality to start with, right? Like I am a human being with a human nervous system and my vagus nerve doesn't connect to my frontal lobes. And we're all just out here doing the best we frickin' can. And at least I am neutral. I can have some neutrality around the path that I have walked and what I am currently navigating.
Yeah. And I'm thinking if you were listening to that, yes, the example was of a child learning people-pleasing or fawning behaviors. And wow, the parallels of you being in this relationship where you are taking ownership for the problems. There's something wrong with you. And you're going to get better and you're going to go to counseling and you're going to clean the house better and you're going to be a better wife and you're going to be a better, you're going to be better in the bedroom. You are going to make all of these changes. And then you're told over and over again that you're not good too. So that just like cements it. And that helped keep you safe.
100%.
So if you can, again, we're not in that space. Like Eric and I are definitely not in that toxic positivity of like, your trauma is only going to make you stronger. All of that stuff. Because trauma sucks. Trauma sucks.
That's right.
That's right. It was horrible. And you can remove yourself that little bit from, I am not the piece of shit because XYZ.
Exactly.
Did XYZ to help myself and help my kids be safe. Because that shame over the I should have known betters. I should have seen it. I'm well educated. My family of origin was quote unquote normal.
Yeah. Right.
All of these pieces that add shame, but that when you had very little control of how you stayed safe, like very little, this gave you one piece where it felt like you could control being safe in that relationship.
If you're in a place, dear listeners, if you're in a place that you could just pause. So this is what I'm talking about beyond the psychoanalyzing, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you could just pause and take that in and from a heart-centered place, from like the most archetypical, loving grandmother, loving energy place, can you really appreciate how people-pleasing or the patterns that you now see are problematic? Can you really take that in, that was important and it was adaptive and it was smart and it was necessary?
Yeah.
And we can change those patterns.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that place it is hard to make these changes, especially if you've been doing it for years and years and years.
Totally.
And years. So I think, great place to start is being able to pause, which I say that like it's no big thing. It's so hard. It can be so hard in practice to pause.
You are overriding millions of years of evolution, because the flight response is telling you, you must act now. So,
Yes.
dissolving urgency in our system is one of the most important things that we can do. I think collectively, we are looking at that, collectively dissolving urgency, collectively dissolving perfectionism, dissolving people pleasing is, just take what would we look like if we were to be moving from more of a wise mind place? It's pretty incredible, right? Like if we were to visualize the world to be able to do that.
Yeah. And so, when you get the email notification from your attorney,
Mm-hmm.
your brain sees that as such a threat. It's like a lion
That's right.
coming to get you. And yet, a lion coming to get you, you're going to, let's be real. Like, you're not going to maybe survive that one. But the email, you have a little bit more choice.
Exactly. So if you can just of course it's stressful. Don't gaslight yourself. Of course,
Yes.
the words on the page are stressful. But if you can just get a little distance, like they are words on a page, get the facts of the case, and then pause. The pause is where you grab your power back. And if you can actually just don't even engage with it, and then find a nervous system regulation practice that actually works for you. So we're going to put a link of a resource that I have in the show notes, I think. But even just Googling like nervous system regulation practice or polyvagal exercises, find something that works with your nervous system that you feel just a little shift with. Maybe it's a little bit of a release in the lower gut, or just a softening of the overall tension that you have in your body, or a felt sense that you can see the myopic picture a little bit, that you can back out of it, right? That email comes in, all you see is that email.
Yep. What is that going to say?
Yes, exactly.
Is this emotion? Is this? And then sometimes, and I hear from you all the time out there that your heart was palpitating, you had a full panic attack, you had to run to the restroom like 20 times, like all of these things. You look at the email and it was just thanks for the information. And so it was all of that really for nothing. And then you kick yourself after because of that response. And so it seems, I don't know, even cliche, but cliches sometimes are great. But guess what? Deep breathing in that moment where you're slowing your heart rate down, you're taking that pause, is going to be maybe enough of a pause, maybe not enough of a pause for the level of anxiety you have.
Right. And again, the level of anxiety you have likely has a reason for being here.
Yes.
You probably have received emails that aren't just thanks for the information.
Yes.
So your nervous system is organized around protection. It is moving to try to protect you. But if you can notice that in the moment, notice what's going on in your body, and then shaking it out. Shaking is a great way of releasing excess energy in the body. Talk to your doctor first, right? But like wiping it off, right? Wiping off the yuck, lion's breath. Like, I always say, like, you got to be willing to be a little weird if you want to heal from trauma.
Regulate things, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're not
even
sitting there thinking and being like, okay, it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Just words on a page. Your vagus nerve doesn't connect to your frontal lobes. That's all thinking. And it is not going to shift in the thinking.
And what regulation looks like, I think, is so misconstrued, or there's such a misbelief about what regulation looks like. So everyone thinks it's like I'm sitting crisscross applesauce, my middle finger and thumb are together, I'm humming, which actually does help everyone.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? That I am so zen. But guess what? I call it hate cleaning. If you are hate cleaning, when you receive said message from attorney, think about cleaning. You're moving around, you're scrubbing things, your whole body is moving. You are releasing energy that needs to get out of your system. I kind of
Totally.
wish I was a hate cleaner. I'm not a hate cleaner. My house would
Yeah.
be cleaner.
Totally. And I think we really should reclaim what regulation means, because it does not mean that you never have an emotion again. It also doesn't mean that you put up with shitty behavior or that you're okay with shitty behavior.
Yeah.
Right? We are impacted by each other. And I think white Western culture has sort of twisted any wisdom that has come from, maybe some Buddhist perspectives or mindfulness perspectives. And of course so here's this wisdom of both and that, yes, we want to take ownership for our feelings, take ownership for our reactions, to be responsible for ourselves and to try to practice emotional boundaries. And we are impacted by shitty behavior.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that the definition of enlightenment is putting up with shitty behavior or being okay with shitty behavior or never not being angry ever. F that. Anger is a sacred emotion. And it's telling you that your boundaries have been crossed.
Yes.
Right? And so
when you can finally be angry, I am so excited with clients in my office. When I finally get to see the angry, I know there's movement.
That's right.
I know there's movement, that you finally have this awareness that you are worth more and deserve better than how you were treated. And then what was done to you was unjust, completely horrible, so harmful, right? And I know anger is scary for a lot of people in general.
Totally. And it tells you that the freeze response is thawing, right? Because if you think about an antelope that's been caught by a lion, that antelope, the best chance it has is to play dead. And we do the same thing, but we can do that in the short term, but we can also do that over the long arc of a relationship, over the long arc of our lives. And so we freeze we're like, this is fine. This is normal. I'm okay. Like all the things you said, I'll acquiesce. I'll be better in the bedroom. I'll keep the house cleaner, la, 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 la. And I'm going to freeze and I'm going to fawn. And then when you start feeling anger, that's a really good sign that the antelope is starting to shake and it is starting to thaw out and either get out of there or fight back. So I think that, anger is really hard for a lot of people and it's really uncomfortable. And sometimes when those freeze responses and those emotions that have been locked away start to come to the surface, we're like, never mind. Put the genie back in the bottle.
This feels horrible. I don't want to feel these things.
I want to go back to the freeze. Sybil and I promise you that keeping moving through it, processing through it, there is liberation and empowerment on the other side of that. And you're never arriving, right? It's an unfolding. It's a continuous process, but it gets better. It gets better.
Yeah. And that it takes practice. It takes building the skills. It takes trusting, right? We have to reteach our nervous system that's like, no, actually, friend, we can keep ourselves safe. Like this situation, it is scary, not unsafe. It is stressful, not unsafe.
Yes. Right. And of course, we can honor that a lot of people do feel like there's a constant threat. Like if their partners were violent or they're just not sure of what their partners were capable of.
Yes.
But in this moment, if you're listening to this podcast or watching this YouTube video, there is no physical harm coming to you right now.
Yes.
And right now. And right now. And so the more that we can teach your nervous system to take in when safety is available, and we can hold a both and. We can hold awareness of your surroundings, get a camera installed in your house, right? Like do the things that you need to do to keep yourselves. I'm not saying like walk around with no boundaries or no guardianship, no protection. Sometimes we need that. And how do we still create lives worth living? How do we still take in the wisdom? And, I think that both and practice is so important. There is a difference between honoring that you have been victimized. That's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And not building your whole identity around the capital V victim. And I'm really careful when I talk about that. People weaponize that like, oh, you're being a victim. Don't be a victim. And that's not what I'm saying. When people are naming that they have been victimized, they are not necessarily playing the victim. And we want to be aware of that. Are we building a whole identity around feeling like the world or the outside of us is just happening to us and we have no autonomy or self-determination? That's where we want to try to step back into our places of power, regulate your nervous system, try to dip your toes into neutrality or compassion. Step back and be curious, like, what are the patterns that I play a role in? Not from a shaming place, not from a criticizing place, not from a, oh, yep, there we go again. You're a real piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. Not from that place. That's actually going to recapitulate the victimization, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you can step back and be like, okay, deep breath, curiosity. How do I feel these patterns energetically? How do I feel this fawning in my body? How do I know that it happens? What would it feel like to align my nervous system to something different? What would it feel like to align my nervous system to the values of empowerment or reciprocity in relationships? What would it feel like to align my nervous system, to teach my nervous system that I am always and already enough, lovable, worthy, and interconnected to every other living thing on this planet, just as you are? That doesn't have to be earned or negotiated. Just notice what that feels like to just be in your nervous system that's in alignment with that. And that's really, really important.
Yeah. And when we've been talking about wisdom, I think that is a good description of finding wisdom from your experience, right? So we are not doing that toxic positivity of,
Nope.
I'm
for a reason.
I'm only who I am because of these traumas.
Ugh, no.
Nope, that is shit. Don't be posting those memes. Folks.
No,
like stop posting the memes.
It's such a bypass. And even though there might be wisdom in some of, like, everything happens for a reason, or that which does not kill you makes you stronger, or whatever. But the way that they are often watered down and used as a go around, used as a bypass, used as a gaslighting, like, it's usually because the person that is saying those words is uncomfortable with the brutality of the situation.
Yes. Yep.
It's uncomfortable with the emotions that it brings up. It's uncomfortable with the unfairness that it brings up. And it wants to just float away into, it's all part of God's plan, or everything happens for a reason, or I'll be stronger because of it. And I'm not saying that there's not such a thing as post-traumatic growth. There is.
Yes.
There is such a thing as turning your wounds into wisdom, as gleaning the lessons and the opportunities for growth that you can learn from going through adversity. That's true. But it is a much more nuanced, deeper practice than TikTok psychology would have us believe, right?
Yeah. And I'm thinking making sure, the word that you've said a lot, and I say all the time, is about being curious about your experience, being curious about your experience in the moment right now. Like, why did I just completely have a panic attack over something that I wouldn't have had a panic attack about? Or why didn't that freak me out this time? Really being curious about your experience, which is sometimes really scary to really look at your experience when your experience has been difficult.
And I actually even like to reframe. So I'm real mindful of how I use the word why. With myself especially, but also with my kids and other people. And of course there can be a curious way that we use the word why, but oftentimes the way that we ask it implies that there's something wrong here. Like, why did I have a panic attack? Why did I respond that way? What? And the implicit message is there's something wrong with what you did. And so maybe just invitation to play with instead of why is, how do I know that that pattern is here? How can I be more aware of it? What tells me that that happened? Or what's the root of it? And of course you can ask, why did I do that? But really be mindful of the implicit shame that is implied in that. Oftentimes the way that why did I do that? Why did I overreact to that email? And there's no good answer to that question. Your brain is going to come up with some real shitty answers. Because you're a piece of shit, because nothing ever changes, because you're doomed forever and you're never going to find love and you're going to die a crazy cat lady or whatever. You're going to make up these stories when you ask that question in a certain way. And so I would just invite you to just play with just a real curiousness. Like if you were this wise crone grandmother, sweetheart, you did the best you can. And tell me about it. Tell me about what happened in your body. Tell me about what the root of that is. Not from a psychoanalyzing place, but from a real heart-centered, like, what is the root? How did you learn to do that? How did you learn to have those adaptations? How did those patterns come to be? And what would be just one way that you could point your feet in the direction of something different? See, just the resonance of that, it feels so different in my body, even as I'm saying it, as opposed to like, why did I do that? Right? And then like, how did I learn that? That feels so different.
Yeah.
To me.
And I was thinking too, as you were talking, I do a lot of parent coaching, a lot of parenting stuff. I'm a play therapist by training. I still work with kids, and some of the language, right? And of course, as a therapist in the room and as a mom, two totally different people, everybody. Like people have this idea like, oh, Sybil's a play therapist. She must be the perfect mom, whatever that looks like. No.
Same, girl.
No.
My kids would come on this podcast in a second and tell you that,
right?
My vagus nerve doesn't connect.
Exactly. And
so
how
many parenting books I've read? It doesn't matter.
Nope. When I leave these
activated
therapy doors.
Yep.
But right, like we'll be asking, and I'm teaching parents this, and yet I find myself doing it at home. Like,
same.
Why did you do that? They actually don't know.
Totally.
Most of the time.
Same. I catch myself asking those like shaming questions to my kids all the time. And I'm like, I know better. Yep. But it's my own activation, right? It's my own worry. It's my own anxiety about their grades and my own perfectionism and all that shit that comes out in that moment. And at the very least, though, I can offer repair. I can say, I really wish I would have approached that missing assignment or whatever in a different way.
What could we do? Like imagine a different experience if we really did, and I haven't talked about it recently, but if we repaired with ourselves in that same
way. Yeah.
Like, wow, I responded to you, self, so harshly.
Yep.
In that situation. I wish I would have responded XYZ. In this other way.
I love that. And actually, I think that's a really powerful intervention. And I use that a lot. Like, if you wouldn't say this in your most regulated state, right? If you wouldn't want to say this to your children, or if you wouldn't want to say this to a friend, or if you came into my office, put my face on it. If you came into my office and I said, didn't you see the red flags?
Yeah.
Why didn't you leave? Yep. I hope you would fire me.
Yes.
Right? And so if you came into my office and I said the shit that you're saying to yourself and you would fire me.
Yes.
What would it, and not just the words, not just the thinking, but what would the attunement, what would the resonance, what would the exchange of love feel like? What would honoring the path that you have walked feel like in your body? Not just thinking, not just the words. And this is why I'm not worried about ChatGPT or AI therapists taking over for us, because they might be able to say all the right words, but they will not be able to provide an attuned regulated nervous system. And we can learn to do that for ourselves, and we can learn to build communities that are rooted in that energy. And that's how we're going to pull this collective closer to the values of empowerment, collectivity, beauty, reciprocity, actual accountability, equity, right? That's how we're going to do that, is by learning how to resonate even in times of deep conflict and with ourselves and with others. How do we stay regulated? And even as we're talking, you've probably had the experience of somebody saying the right-ish, whatever that means, right words, the words like, oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that, or, whatever.
My audience has heard so many of those.
Yeah. But there's no actual accountability. And there's this sense that they're just saying the words to quiet you, to paint, I'm losing a word.
It's just to be like, we're done.
Yes.
And we're done here.
But it's like this pop psychology. And oh man, so many abusers are so good at weaponizing psychology language. And so we have to be really deep in our wisdom of paying attention to what our bodies are saying. And if you're not feeling safe, if you're not feeling regulated, of course we can look at, is this my shit? But we can also give ourselves permission to pay attention to that, because there's a difference between if I were to say, that must be really hard for you. And you could tell that I'm not really regulated, right? That I'm not attuned. Whereas if I'm saying that must be really hard, you can feel a difference in the energy behind those words and the regulation that people are showing up with. And so that's important for us to do with ourselves too. Like, how do we show up in wisdom and resonance and beyond psychoanalyzing ourselves?
Yeah. And I think that because as you're talking, I'm like, oh, is this your new book that you have out here? Right.
Pretty much, actually. Shameless
Lives that last.
Yes, actually. Yeah.
Yes.
So
share with us your desire for someone who picks up your book.
So I just read my book for the 50th time. It's like,
my gosh,
literally sending it to print this week, hopefully.
Yes.
And I read my book and I was like, I like my book, so that felt good. So the book is called, and it's really in line with what we're talking about. It's called Always Enough, Never Done. And the subtitle is Heal Your Nervous System, Turn Wounds into Wisdom, and Cultivate Your Badass Life. And so this is volume 1. This is really focused on your individual nervous system. It is chock full of nervous system regulation exercises. There's an accompanying workbook that has all kinds of videos in it and places to write things and prompts and exercises and all of those things. But the book itself has tons of like how trauma is stored physically in your body, how to actually help regulate your nervous system and expand your window of tolerance. And then I dive deep into the descending path work, the work of processing grief, trauma, wounding, and the ascending path work. Like, how do we step into joy and creativity and reclaim what is primary in us? And the biggest premise of the book is we really are always and already enough, lovable, worthy, divinely, or just interconnected to every other living thing on the planet. And we have work to do, and we all have shadow, and we better look at our shit, because even if we are the most nice, quote unquote, people pleasing, martyry person on the planet, we will cause harm. It is not the same as active perpetration, but it will leak out. It will leak out if we don't look at our shit. And so that's really the invitation of the book. My deepest desire is that it will move beyond the pop psychology, move beyond the thinking, the affirmation practice, toxic positivity, and give people a little bit of an idea. I don't even want to say roadmap, because it is such a non-linear process.
Yeah. Oh my, yes.
But for shorthand, let's say a roadmap for how to engage in this constant unfolding of ourselves. And the metaphor that I use is we're like a kaleidoscope. We are in this current iteration in our lives right now. In all of its imperfections and its challenges and its struggles, it's exactly where we need to be. You are on sacred ground right now, and you can't bypass the step that you're at. You are here. You're meant to be here. And slowly things turn and we compost different patterns and we shed skin. And then whoop, then we're in this, new iteration of this kaleidoscope. And so that's what it is. It's like always enough, never done. And I think when we hit on that never done, we can ping on some shame shit. Like, what do you mean?
It's like, no, I just
never enough.
I don't want to do this.
I just want to be done. And that's why we have to dip our toes into the waters of, and you're already there. You're always and already enough. And that is what is primary. That can't be taken away or given to you by anything or anyone outside of yourself. That is always and already there. And it's primary. And everything else that we do, people pleasing, over responsibility, all the shit, that is secondary. But it feels like it's personality.
Yes.
It feels like it's who we are. And it's not. It's just protection. And it's exactly what your nervous system is meant to do. But this is a process of remembering what is primary. And it is not hustling for some perfect version of yourself outside here in the ether. It is untangling the fucked up ball of yarn of trauma, one string at a time, and letting the light start to shine through. And that is always and already there.
Yeah. And I love that. Somebody recently asked me if I would write, I need to write a book on the stages of healing from coercive control, domestic violence. And in theory, I'm like, yes, right? And then I was like, okay, first of all, I have poor executive function. So coming up with step 1, step 2, step 3. And then I was like,
and it doesn't exist like that.
No, because it's just not linear.
That's right.
And so while people talk about this stage of your life or these different areas of your life, sure, but it all swirls around and certain things from back then are coming out right now. And
Exactly.
And so I was like, I don't think, maybe there's a great book out there of that, but it's going to be mine.
No, and I
can't be mine.
That's not how a lot of your listeners and the people that I work with are organized. A lot of listeners and people I work with are women or postmodern, a little bit more nonlinear constituted folks, a little more left brain folks, maybe. That first this and then this and then this, that kind of thing doesn't vibe with us.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that. I was like, sure, I could do that. I'm like, really? And I was like,
so this book really is a nonlinear process. And I have to say, volume 2, I was really bummed that I had to split them up because I really wanted them in the same place.
Yeah.
But it was just going to be a, 550 page book. And I'll leave that to the fantasy novelists because nobody wants a 500 page book about trauma recovery. But volume 2 is about relationships and the larger collective. And that is nonlinear. We think, we have to love ourselves before we can have a successful relationship. And I really want to dismantle that as well. Yes, it's an inside job. Yes, we have to dip our toes into some sense of dissolving that shame-bound identity.
Yes.
And we don't exist in a vacuum. We contribute to our relationships and our communities, and our relationships and our communities impact us. And so that is even a nonlinear thing, right? So I applaud you not writing a step-by-step guide because I
was like, that sounds like a great idea. And then when I actually thought about it, I was like, oh, no, I don't think I could do that. I don't think that is how this works. Shoot, if it was how this worked, I would have already written the book and made millions and y'all would be healed.
Right.
Healed.
Same with thinking, same with criticism, right? If knowing healed, if criticism healed, we'd all be enlightened by now.
We'd be amazing. Oh my gosh, yes.
Right?
All healed.
Yes. But it doesn't work that way, my friends. And it's okay. It's good that it doesn't work that way. Because that leaves
how boring.
That leaves room for the mystery. That leaves room for just discovering magical things about ourselves that we had no idea were there, but they're
Yeah.
there. And that doesn't happen in the step by step linear way of doing things. It just doesn't.
Yeah. So thank you for joining me today. I know that we're going to collaborate more in the future just because we both have really big visions for our communities, right? Just in slightly different ways, but just we want to see change and people healing
Totally.
and people feeling safe.
And I think it's really important. And I'm so inspired by more and more people. I think this happened through COVID and through Black Lives Matter, and thinking about things on a collective level, not just individual level.
Yeah.
And I just want to say to you and your listener, the work that you are doing, the healing that you are doing, the silliness that you are trying to reclaim with your kids and with yourself, that matters. And if we can just think about that, is part of the pulling the arc closer to where we want it to be, right? Closer to the values that most of us want to see in the world. And, we're dismantling urgency and perfectionism and dominance. That's what we're doing in this work. And you're not alone. You have a community, even if it's just energetically, you have a community of people with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And community is so important. And everyone listening knows that that is a stance that I hold to be very strong, that healing relational trauma needs to happen within relationships.
Yeah.
And so,
totally. Yeah. If I could just plug one more thing that I'm starting.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am doing group coaching. I'm going to start those back up again. And it's just $77 a month for twice a month group calls. And it'll be lunchtime calls on Tuesdays. So people can head to the website, avoscounseling.com. And that's my intention, is to build community in that way as well. So thanks for letting me just.
Absolutely.
Plant
If you all know, all of the resources are always in the show notes. They're on my website, on the podcast page there too. And so we have that all for you. And thank you, Erica. And thank you all for listening, and excited for 2025. And we'll catch you on the next episode of the Rising Young podcast.
Thanks to both.